Hello dear viewers, a very warm welcome to our channel. It's very good to have you here. In this video we are going to have a look at the construction and principle of operation of a combi chamber on an air brake. This is called a combination chamber because it combines the service brake part and the parking brake part in a single unit. So that is why we call it a combi chamber or combination chamber. Now when you look at the part, this right here, number one is a fork head that is going to actuate the slack adjuster, and that a slack adjuster will operate the S-cam that is going to apply brake by expanding the brake shoes in the rear wheel. And this fork head is to be activated by the push rod. The push rod is a common push rod for the service brake and for the parking brake as well. Now, in order to prevent dust particles from getting in and contaminating the entire system, we have right here gator seal, and behind the gator seal into the housing there is a helical compression spring that is going to return the push rod assembly when the service brake is released. The service brake is to be applied by simply exerting air pressure on this diaphragm, which is located right here, number 6, that is the diaphragm. By applying force on this, you can exert force that can push the push rod to this side, applying brake. Now once the pneumatic pressure or the air pressure is released from this chamber, the entire push rod assembly will be returned by the helical compression spring or the diaphragm actuator. And right here at number 5 we have a piston. The piston is on which the diaphragm is acting, or it is a part on which the parking brake spindle is acting when parking brake is applied. So these are some of the parts that are used for the service brake, and some of them, including the push rod and the spindle, they are also used for the parking brake application. When we come to the rear chamber, the spring chamber, it is used for the parking brake. This red part is where compressed air is supplied when you want to release the parking brake. And right here at number 8, we have a helical compression spring. This is a very tough spring that is used to exert and apply parking brake when brake is applied. So this is a very tough spring. Now that tough spring is acting on a piston. We call it a spring brake cylinder. Right here, this part, this is that helical compression spring. This very tough spring used for engaging parking brake is acting on part number 9, which is called the piston. We call it the spring brake cylinder. When this spring expands, it will be pushing this way, acting on this push rod. When air pressure is introduced into this chamber, however, air pressure will act on this spring brake cylinder or in this piston and retract the parking brake spring. Now, the entire assembly right here is when no brake is applied. As you can see, the push rod is returned fully, and the parking brake spring, the compression spring, is compressed due to this presence of compressed air in this chamber. Now let's go ahead and see what will happen when service brake is applied. When the driver steps on the foot pedal or the service brake valve, the service brake valve will allow compressed air to be admitted into this chamber. Line 11 will be an input for the combination chamber. Now when air is admitted, when compressed air is admitted into this chamber, that compressed air will actuate this diaphragm. It will push the diaphragm, forcing this push rod into actuating the slack adjuster and applying brake. This line indicates the original position of the push rod. Now because force has been exerted on this assembly, it has moved to the left, engaging brake. Now the amount of this travel, the amount by which the push rod is pushed to the left, is dependent on how much compressed air is admitted into this chamber. If large amount of compressed air is applied here, the travel of the push rod will increase, so the braking force will also increase. If only tiny amount of compressed air is admitted in here, however, only a slight motion of the push rod will engage brake. Brake will be applied slightly. So by simply changing the volume of compressed air that is going to be fed to this service brake chamber, you can vary the amount of force to be exerted on the brake or the brake application. So this is how the service brake is activated. Now, when you want to stop using the service brake, the driver will let go of the pedal. When the service brake foot valve is released, this compressed air will be vented to the atmosphere at the service brake valve. When this brake chamber is vented, when air is removed from this chamber, this helical compression spring will return the spindle and the pushrod assembly back to its original position, retracting it and disengaging brake application. So this is how service brake is activated. When you want to apply service brake, you introduce compressed air, and when you let go of the pedal, the air that was initially in here will be removed, and by that the helical spring can now return the diaphragm and the pushrod assembly back to original place. That way brake application will be interrupted. So this is how the service brake is activated. Now let's go ahead and see how the parking brake is activated. As you can see right now on this part, because of this compressed air, when compressed air is applied to this parking spring chamber, the compressed air will compress this very tough spring to the right side, pushing this piston. A spring brake cylinder assembly is pushed to the right, so there is no brake being applied by this spring. So the entire parking brake assembly is moved to the right. That will prevent this spindle from acting on the push rod and applying brake. Now, when you want to apply parking brake, all you have to do is remove this compressed air. So applying a parking brake will be done by simply removing the air from this chamber. Releasing parking brake will be done by introducing compressed air into the spring chamber, but applying parking brake is to be done by the spring. Applying parking brake is not done by a compressed air, rather it is done by this tough spring. So removing compressed air from this chamber will apply the parking brake. Let's go ahead and see what will happen when this air, which is keeping the parking brake spring compressed, is removed from this chamber. So this is what will happen when the compressed air is removed from the parking brake chamber. When compressed air is removed and when this chamber becomes pressureless, the already compressed parking spring now relaxes, forcing this spring piston and making the spindle to push the pushrod assembly and apply brake. As you can see, the pushrod assembly has moved from the original position to the left. This will engage brake. So this is how parking brake is applied. When parking brake is applied, force is exerted by this tough spring. The tough spring will be the one that is acting on the pushrod and engaging brake. When you want to release the parking brake, you can admit in compressed air into this chamber. That will return the entire assembly back, pulling this spindle away from this pushrod, and then the diaphragm and the pushrod assembly will be returned by this diaphragm spring. So this is how the parking brake is applied. Now this is a full brake application when parking brake is applied by this very tough spring. If you want to manually disengage the parking brake, for example, if there is a problem with the pneumatic system and you want to tow your vehicle, disengaging this will be done by simply using this hexagon bolt. When you loosen this bolt, when it is coming out, it will pull this piston and it will compress the parking brake spring. So when you want to manually tow, if there is a problem with the parking brake system or if there is a problem with the compressed air system, you can use this screw. Loosening it will pull this. See, this head when this head is right here, it will pull the entire assembly, compressing the spring and disengaging the parking brake as well. So parking brake can manually be disabled by simply loosening this bolt. So this is how the combination chamber is used in trucks and large vehicles using a pneumatic brake system or air brake system. Well, dear viewers, that is all we have for you regarding the principle of operation of the combination chamber in an air brake system. If you find this video helpful and if you enjoy what has been presented, please smash the like button. If you are new to this channel, do consider subscribing, turn on notifications so that you will be the first to get notified whenever we come up with another video. Until then, stay safe.